Hello, salam, shalom, namaste, sasrikal, aloha, hola, ciao, bonjour, Buna, привет, mabuhay, and jean dobre. It's so good to be with you again, and I know you'll be so happy you've joined us today because we have a very special guest with us, and it's Sohale Sizar, who's the founder of Soul that is on a mission to illuminate the daily practice of gratitude for his rapidly growing online community. Welcome, Sahil.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here, Samia.
Yes, I'm so happy that you're here. And I know because you'll be talking about gratitude, by the time we're done, both you and I and our listeners will be feeling so much happier.
I hope so.
Indeed, indeed. So actually, before we get into the whole gratitude thing, so please tell us more about who you are and what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was born and raised in New Hope, Pennsylvania, really on a quest to make a impact or bring a new color to the world since I was 9. And about 3 years ago, I was told I should start a gratitude journal. So I went and bought a journal, hundreds of people, if not, I believe about 100 million people in this country have bought a journal. And like 100 million other people, I failed. I wrote in it for 5 days. That's it. And then I was like, I'm done with this. And it ended up being this nice journal on my desk. And how many of us have, bought a nice journal sitting on the desk? So instead, I would start writing an email to myself and schedule sending it. I write what I'm grateful for. I'd schedule send it, come back to my inbox. And I do that for 3 years. And I build this gratitude habit. And that really brought me full circle to my childhood, where I was raised in a community um, where actually I really didn't feel necessarily, at least by society around me, that safety to be who I am. But I did have it from my parents and my inner home. And that safety meaning to make an impact, to actually go outside my bubble and make an impact.
Mm,
And what this then led me now to is to building Soul. So I was a CEO of another company before that. That company was acquired, and now I'm focusing on taking this hack that allowed me to build a gratitude habit to others.
nice. Actually, you're so right about the struggle we can have with journaling. I've been through that in somewhat different contexts. But the fact that you actually did scheduled emails to yourself, that's something that actually creates a very interesting layer because you didn't just write it down somewhere, you actually sent it to yourself. So you actually read what you had written, which is something a lot of times, although encouraged in the context of physical journal writing, a lot of people won't get around to doing either. So the fact that you receive these emails from yourself reminding you of what you were grateful for, I think you actually added an element to the practice that is really brilliant.
It was amazing to get the email back and like, oh yeah, totally forgot about what happened last week, that little moment, and when you read those, it really does impact you because you remember that you're
Mhm.
loved. There's actually a few things that I learned that I think a lot of folks would benefit. One was when I was writing the emails and I would schedule send them, I would do it spontaneously. Like
Mm.
how many of us, we do something every day, uh, and then, we stop after a week or two, and just like, it's like, especially with new products or notifications, like after 2 weeks, like stop telling me every day, to do. So spontaneity was really powerful.
Mm.
And then also mercy. I would write I said to myself, one word is even a win. Even if you write one word, that's a win. So these were a couple of my takeaways and more that came about from the experience.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, I definitely want to learn more about this system that you've created for helping people practice gratitude. But before we do that, tell me a little bit more about, um, the tell me more about your connection to gratitude. Like, why should we care in the first place about creating a gratitude attitude?
Hey, thanks for tuning into this episode. Hope you're getting value out of it. For your information, this episode has been sponsored by the Happiness 101 program. Are you a change maker, coach, trainer, or healer? Are chains of fear holding you back from making the impact and income you desire? Using a unique combination of positive psychology and the spiritual wisdom of our most effective change makers, the Happiness 101 program helps you break through your limiting beliefs and manifest the abundance and success you desire with fun and ease. Interested? Book a free Happiness 101 exploration call with me, your happiness expert, Samia Bano. Just use my online calendar link in the show notes. Now, back to the show.
Yeah. I think we live in a day and age now where it's so easy to compare ourselves with one another when you're on Instagram or if,
Mhm.
using social media or really finding inner peace is probably the goal of so many.
Yeah.
We know that. And what gratitude did for me was became this emotional life vest where every time I thought that the waves of life were a little bit high, it allowed me to keep my head above water because I remembered that I was loved. It's a really,
Tell
yeah,
me more about that. How how are you, so you say you would think of something you were grateful for and it reminded you that you were loved. You have to
yeah.
tell me more about that.
Yeah, so for example, let's say you have a busy work week and you feel like,
Yeah.
oh, I could have done better on this or that or whatever it is. And then I get my spontaneous email pop up sometime and I
Hmm.
see what I wrote last Thursday. And I'm like, oh, wow, it just totally reframed my narrative that things maybe aren't going as well as I'd like or that it would just reframe life. Like it is going in the right direction. Have patience. It is going in the right direction. You know, seek refuge in your spirituality, and I think that's really powerful to have that reminder. In the world, especially in a
Mm.
society where we're told, you always need to gain things externally, right? Buy this and you will be happy. You're switching the equation. You're saying that I am enough, and you go from a place of abundance versus scarcity in your throughout your day.
Okay. All right. Uh, I so if I might ask a follow-up question, just
Yeah.
dig a little bit deeper. Um, so again, coming back to the idea of feeling loved. So are you saying that when you talk about feeling loved in this context, you're talking about it from a spiritual perspective?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, for me, yes.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. No, just clarifying. And so
Yeah.
then in the context of, again, like people who are listening to us who have very different backgrounds and with diverse audience, can
Yeah.
you tell me a little bit more about your idea of love from a spiritual perspective? And again, I'm sure it'll connect back to gratitude.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, I got to give a plug about all the other benefits of gratitude because there's 30
Right.
years of research that says incredible benefits that are amazing.
Yeah.
The concept of love, there's a beautiful story where the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was asked by the angel Gabriel of what is spiritual excellence or ihsan.
Mm,
And in short, if I may, he basically says to worship God as if you see him everywhere.
mm,
And if you don't see him, know that he is seeing you. And
uh-huh.
And so what's wonderful about this idea, I believe that love ultimately at its core is to be seen.
Mm,
And so when we realize that that we are being watched in a loving way, it's a gratitude
yeah.
is the reminder that we are being seen
Mm,
by the divine.
mm. Okay, okay. So now I'm better understanding your connection between feeling loved and the gratitude journaling or the emailing, the
Yeah.
activity
Yeah.
that, wow, I don't think I've ever heard anyone define love in that way, but there's something very cool and touching about it. Oh, thank you for sharing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's what intimacy is too, actually. I mean,
Yeah.
like everything, all the layers of love that we see in
Mm,
the world, from kindness to
mm.
romance to platonic, familial, it's all related at its core of being seen.
Yeah, yeah. And actually, like when we are practicing gratitude, it's also about what we are seeing,
Exactly.
the perspective with which we are seeing.
Hmm.
So, so to be
Exactly.
seen is to feel love. And then in the context of gratitude, we are seeing, if I may say it this way, that we are seeing things maybe perhaps from a perspective of love, because love isn't obviously just one thing. And certainly insofar as we may be thinking of love as an aspect of a relationship, there is definitely give and take. And
Yeah.
so in this case, it's both about seeing and being seen.
Hmm.
And on the one side of that is love as you experience it, like I'm being loved. But on the other side of it is the gratitude of seeing things from a loving perspective.
Yeah. Yeah.
And actually, um, oh my gosh, you just reminded me of this really amusing lesson that I've been learning. Where one of my teachers I've been working with, he actually had us do this experiment with ourselves where he was like, okay, like feel your heart, your spiritual heart, and through your spiritual heart, like first of all, experience that you are being loved. And how does that feel? And then you feel through your heart loving back.
Yeah.
And then how do you feel? And if you were to compare those two states, um, like what's the difference? And the amazing thing that I experienced was that actually when I feel loved, of course I feel really happy because you are being loved. And like if you truly feel loved, you feel so happy. And at the same time when, you feel yourself loving back, you feel even more happy.
Yeah. 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 It's profoundly beautiful. I think that there's a oneness in the giver and the receiver too.
Mhm.
And so then what gratitude essentially is allowing us to do is tap into I
Mm,
believe, the divine root that inspired all that is. I believe that God created the world out of gratitude for his own magnificence.
mm,
It's almost his own glory. And so every time we're being grateful, we're essentially taking the viewpoint, or as much as we can, or adorning ourselves with the attributes of divinity, in that seeing
mm.
the abundance versus the supposed absence of it, which I would say is darkness.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I know like the idea of the abundance mindset is something that is something it's being talked about as an idea, and for sure I agree with you that like if you really, really want to experience abundance, gratitude is the way to go. Um, but so tell me more, not no buts in this situation, just tell me more about like for people who feel a bit challenged around practicing gratitude, who feel challenged about being able to see the abundance
Yeah.
around them. What do you think is like maybe one of the core issues that they're dealing with?
So a lot of how we're informed and how we know things and how we see things is really through our software of our minds, right? And a
Mm,
lot of times the narratives that we have in our minds are geared towards scarcity. The
mm,
way we speak, is it you'll notice like some folks or some you'll see all the time in advertising and everywhere, where it's like, I don't know if I can do it. But like that's a wrong statement like, from a abundance perspective. It's like I am doing it, or whatever that is. So a lot of it is rewiring our psychology of reframing the way we think. And when we
mm,
reframe, then the prism changes. When the prism changes, then we see things differently. And then when we see things differently, we then reinforce that prism, right? I mean, that's how it works psychologically for sure.
mm,
So that I would say is like if folks want to, reframe their minds or rewire their minds, that's a whole process in itself. That's a whole process of self-discovery. Some of it's psychological, right? Going to your childhood, like what were things that happened maybe that gave you narratives of who you are and
mm,
tapping on those and then changing them. Affirmations
mm.
is powerful as well. There's a host of things that we could talk about on that front, but that's essentially
Yes,
what it's about.
yes, yes, I agree with you. I agree with you. Definitely, in the context of my work as a happiness expert, grounded in positive psychology, that is one of the key lessons that you learn, that the way that you feel, the way that you think, the way you act, these are all interconnected and interrelated to each other. And it's also all connected to what you believe. And so the beliefs that we, a lot of times, they take home in our minds, in our hearts. Um, we don't even realize when that belief has taken root inside of us.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, in the context of feeling scarcity in our lives, it has to do with, you may have experienced moments of scarcity or when you didn't feel safe um, in your life. And instead of, us being able to have the perspective of, oh, just in this moment, I felt something missing. But in the big picture of things, look, I made it through. I'm fine. Everything is okay right now or
Yeah.
turned out okay in that moment. And from a bigger picture perspective, we sort of, um, take the little, that moment of not feeling safe and we sort of like generalize it to, oh, I'm not safe or there isn't enough. And
Yeah.
then, it just begins to impact how we see the world in general and how we feel in general. Yeah.
No, absolutely. And all that, as you said, comes down to the beliefs, and we're reinforcing our beliefs. So what gratitude is doing
Yeah.
is rewiring the brain. And we
Yeah.
see that from a physical perspective as well. Those who are
Yes.
grateful, they have better skin, they have better cardiovascular health, they live longer. I mean, because you
Mm-hmm.
have these transmitters like serotonin and dopamine and oxytocin being released. So
Mm-hmm.
it's all interconnected. And so if we can actually build a gratitude practice we can actually transform our lives. Now, and then the question becomes, all right, how do I actually do that? Right? If
Mm-hmm.
I'm convinced that it works, how can I do that?
Yeah,
What I did was writing emails and then led to me to
yeah,
build a tool to help people to do that. But
yeah,
we definitely need to find ways to do that because it is pivot.
yeah. So tell me a little bit more about the tool. Are you still helping people send emails to themselves?
No, no. So it's got way more advanced. It's a text message based tool, so that's much more advanced for you. But what we do is we send spontaneous nudges of gratitude prompts over text message, and folks can
Oh,
reply to the text message. So one, it's spontaneous, like the email. You get it a Monday, then a
mm,
Thursday, you don't know when. And then two, it's on your phone, which is wonderful in the sense that you can do a voice memo. You can send a photo. So the bar is really low, which was one of my insights
uh-huh.
as well, which is like, this shouldn't be like I don't have to turn on a candle and have a journal and write and I like let's make it really as easy as possible. And we have
Yeah.
an Apple version, like iMessage version. So if you're in your iPad or your MacBook or whatever, you can just, you know, text Soul right there and type away. Uh, and then we encrypt all that in an online journal where people can remember all the moments that they've been loved and et cetera.
Mm.
And they can opt in even to receive insights about themselves, who's inspiring them, what are the patterns that are inspiring them to be joyful, which are really important at doubling down and finding more happiness in life.
So when you talk about helping people see the patterns, it's based on the things that they have
Yeah.
journaled and
Yeah.
documented in the context of responding back to these nudges of gratitude prompts. Oh, that is really cool. Yeah, so that is sort of like if you were able to look back at your own emails or if you had a physical journal and you were able to look back. And that is like really, I really like that because, you know, um, journal writing, not just in the context of like the gratitude practice. When I first started journal writing, it was more to just pour out whatever I was thinking and feeling. Um, it was like I was very socially challenged in my youth, and so I didn't have anyone to talk to, and so for me, journaling became that way of having an imaginary someone to communicate with. That it was like really important, and over the years, like at this point, I've like I don't know how many journals all filled up
Wow.
from my past. And every so often, I would, and I continue to every so often just go back and take a look. And it's like amazing how there's certain patterns that you can so clearly see that you are repeating. If
Yeah.
there's like problems, there's challenges, there's questions, and I was like, what? I was asking this stuff and thinking about it like 10 years ago, and I'm still stuck here.
Yeah.
But there's
Yeah.
other things you can see. Oh, I've made so much progress.
Totally. Totally. And we focus because it's gratitude journal, we focus on, what's working and how much you
Right.
can double down on the what's
Mm.
working. Because, it's so powerful. I feel like the most precious knowledge in the world is knowing who you are, right? If
Yeah.
you know who you are, you can
Mm.
navigate where you want to go. And what does that mean to know
Mhm.
who you are? What do you like? What you don't like? What's working for you?
Yeah.
And so when you discover that, oh, here are the concepts that inspire me, then you can bring more of that into your life. And it's
Yeah.
such a pity, I feel you, because I also did, when I was growing up, I did a bunch of journals and then they're all now in the
Mm.
basement. And like, I'll be candid, I don't go back and read them because they're at my childhood home and I'm less there. But it's, it's an actually, I was going to say it's a pity. No, it's not. It's an opportunity to create a way for people to actually take advantage of all that they've written. And so that's opt-in
Mm.
though. Some people there, because we leverage AI for that, we do delete people's data every 30 days on AI, and it doesn't train any data set. But for those who are open to that, they can opt in and
Mm.
learn more about who they are. We even say their light
Mm.
type, which is cool. So it's like, how do you find joy? There's 6 different light types, and it's based off
Ah.
of the stages of alchemy. And so specific people experience or find joy in unique ways. Like, for example, I'm a transcendent light. So I find gratitude through recognizing divinity in my every day. It's
Mm.
like for me, that's how it shows up. But others are different.
Yeah. Tell me more about this. Sorry, what was the six? What? Tell
So
me
the
more.
6 light types.
Six light types. Okay, I've not heard about those. Tell me more.
Yeah, so there's 7 stages of alchemy. Alchemy is the
Uh-huh.
transformation from lead to gold, and but talking about from a spiritual angle, and it's actually in a
Yeah.
lot of esoteric texts. So the 7 stage is crystallization, or this idea of just completeness. So 1 through 6 is really, I would say, where we focus on. So we call them 6 light types. So the first one, and we can go each one, the first 4 really coordinate with the seasons.
Ah.
So the first, and in alchemy, generally these stages represent the macrocosm. So the first 4 would say it would be north is for the first stage. And I mean, this is a way longer conversation. We'll go really deep, but I'm going to give it an overview. You can double click where you would like.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
the first stage represents like winter, which is like this burning away. The second stage or second light. So burning away is purification, ultimately
Mm.
purification. The second light type is related to spring. So life itself. Trust, it's really a washing away. The third is coagulation, or really that's like peace, and you
Oh.
find maybe gratitude through just like moments of peace. So there's 6 different light types, and so the first 4 represent seasons, and then the last 2 represent height and depth. Height meaning transcendence, and then depth meaning represents the spiritual heart or sun, light, an
Oh.
embodiment of source and spirit and spirit.
Okay, okay. So in this framework, it's that you are saying there are six types, but also it seems like there might be a little bit of a process kind of a thing going in terms of like stages of growth, as it were. Um, and obviously, we would not imagine that you are always stuck in one stage, or
Yeah.
probably, it's more like, oh, in different aspects of your life, you may be experiencing things at different stages. So
Yeah.
simultaneously, you could be like in the context of your, maybe a personal relationship you're really struggling with. You may be at, I don't know, like maybe experiencing the winter.
Yeah,
But,
burning
in
away. Yeah.
another context of your life, you may be in the spring stage, or whatever. So you can be experiencing all these stages in your life, even simultaneously kind of a thing. So
Absolutely.
it's not like um, you're just one thing or one experience.
That's exactly
Yeah.
right.
Okay.
And in the context of gratitude, it's more of just like what inspires you, like what
Mm,
stage really inspires you. But we all
yeah.
go through every stage all the time. I mean, every stage, not all the time,
Yeah.
but throughout life.
Yeah.
Because it's actually, I would say, the framework for the entire world. I mean, just how the world works from nature's perspective,
Mm,
whether it's from cooking food, like how to actually prepare and cook food, from nature itself, and
yeah.
the birth, the life, the death, the rebirth, etc. So
Mm,
those stages represent that.
yeah. So through your app, do you also like guide people to sort of be able to up level from one stage to the next, insofar as there may be an up leveling effect of, for example, going from experiencing the winter to the spring, etc.?
That is if I could figure that one out, then everyone would be an enlightened master, I think.
Mm,
Which it's a process that's inward, but we do
yeah,
facilitate the doors to get there. And you know what's amazing,
yeah.
Samia, is that we are the only ones who are doing this and have built and thought of it in this way.
Mm,
Because it's a marriage between philosophy and tech, or
mm,
mysticism and tech. And so
yeah,
you have to have integrity in both in order
yeah,
to righteously share this. So what do we do instead? So we talked about prompts and sending gratitude prompts,
yeah.
but we have something called soul paths. So
Ah,
people, because it's so important to have a path or to path meaning a direction of how you
mm,
can go through quote unquote the seasons.
yeah.
Right. And so we have paths around self-compassion. We have paths around different spiritual modalities or traditions so that people can experience what is the path for them in
Mm,
order to deepen their inner peace and self-realization.
yeah, that is really cool. That is really cool. And even like just something as simple as kind of prompts um we have can sort of help. B- But you're right, because it is an inner process, and um, like an interesting aspect of our psychology is that um, especially like when you're trying to create change, positive change, it's like the gap between where you are and where you would ideally love to go cannot be too much for you. And
Yeah.
obviously that's a individual thing, like what you experience as too much for you is an individual assessment. Um, because it's like in the context of, for example, educational psychology, they talk about if the test that you're given is too difficult. Like if you're a grade one student and you're given a sixth grade exam, it's going to be too much unless you are a hidden genius and misplaced in terms of you shouldn't be in the first grade in the first place. But assuming you're actually grade one level and somebody hands you a sixth grade test, it's going to be too much for you. You're not going to be able to you know, meet the challenge, and it's actually going to discourage you because you'll be like, oh, no, I can't do this. It's likely to make you think, that you're a failure, et cetera, et cetera. Um, but obviously in the context again of like our education, the goal is to keep up leveling your knowledge
Yep.
and teaching you things that you don't know, but you have to be give presented the right level of challenge for you so that you can actually learn. It's like
Yeah.
not too much of a stretch so that you can, and it's like when you're feeling down and you want to start feeling better, yeah, you do have to also take steps that are manageable for you. So I mean,
Exactly.
there are processes. It's not there. I mean, if we look into whether it's research in the context of psychology or spiritual teachings, like you said, for example, through the framework of these six light types, there are understandings of how you can go from even feeling really bad to helping yourself to feel the
Yeah.
very best. But yeah, how would you do that in the context of like an app? Wow, you've got me thinking.
Well, it's a good question, but I really feel
Yeah.
like it's that that quote that says you can
Mm,
teach a you could feed a man a fish for one day, or you could, and then you can teach him again. He can feed
yeah.
himself for like ever. So
Yeah.
I do think, and that's why I said earlier, the most precious knowledge in the world is knowing who you are, right?
Yeah.
Because if you know who you are, then you're able to more effectively manage exactly what you're saying, and that is a
Yeah.
very individual journey. So the
Yeah.
question, how can we support folks though in that journey so that they can learn more. And so you mentioned
Yeah.
about educational psychology, we have a path about building emotional intelligence and self-awareness.
Nice.
Yeah. And for 30 days, you'll get prompts or you'll get 30 prompts or so. I think it's spanned over 60 days. Every other day of prompts that are related to helping you understand
Mm,
yourself and being aware of yourself.
mm,
Because awareness is such a key part of this, right? I mean,
yeah.
how can you assess yourself or not? I don't like the word assess, but how can you understand yourself if you're not aware of yourself?
Yeah. No, just start with awareness. Of course, of course, if you're not even aware, you cannot even begin to talk about anything else really. Um, and so like, yeah, so from awareness to acceptance, even just from awareness to acceptance, it's like a journey, like acceptance of what, like, because we have a tendency to oftentimes fight the realities that we perceive, that
Yeah.
we become aware of, and we're like, no, I don't like this.
Yeah.
I don't want to deal with this. And
Yep.
so, you want to deny it, you want to suppress it, you want to run away from it. But the beautiful thing about gratitude is that, it's like taking that perspective that, I mean, you don't want to run away from that, because it makes you feel so good. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's funny. It
yeah,
seems like gratitude is alchemizing our life. Right?
yeah,
It's taking something that, or taking life generally and saying, okay, well, how are we going to transfigure this and see it as well? Now, I do want to mention that doesn't mean that everything is always rosy too, right? It's like there's this thing that some people talk about, and I don't know if folks know about this or not, I've heard it, but toxic positivity, this idea that like
ah,
we're always going to be happy, etc. What I'm saying is opposite of that. It's what it's saying is that let's recognize what is the light and be
mhm,
grateful for it. And we're
mhm,
human. We're going through this journey. Each one of us has a journey. And throughout it, we can transform that journey in unique and profound ways when we look at the abundance of that. And then that leads to an abundant mindset, which then leads to the calling of more of that into one's life.
mhm. Yeah, no, I thank you for bringing up the toxic positivity thing because it is a problem. Um, and I think also though that um, like where I am at in my life now, I'm actually striving. I like for me, it's a spiritual goal to cultivate um, the gratitude attitude. Let's just call it. Every moment to experience that sense of gratitude and the happiness and the joy and the peace that comes with it, to experience that every moment, regardless of what's going on in my life. And so that is a goal that I'm striving
Yeah,
for. And
beautiful.
and it has nothing to do with toxic positivity. Because as I was saying, what happens is and what leads to toxic positivity is when you go into denial and suppression and you're like, no, I don't want to see this. I don't want to deal with this. I'm going to pretend as far as I can that everything's fine and, dandy and this and that. But that's not what the gratitude perspective is about. Gratitude, when you are cultivating like gratitude, you're like, okay, I'm looking straight at the facts, whatever is happening in my life, and I accept that these are the facts. I'm never going to deny them. I'm not going to run away from them. But what is the meaning that I give to these facts? What
Yeah,
does it
exactly.
mean about, am I safe? Do I have enough help and support? Am I loved or not? Like what is the meaning do I give to these facts? And, that is where, when you have gratitude, the meaning that you give to the facts of your life, I mean, it's so beautiful that, it just naturally focuses you on what you do have rather than what you don't have. And it focuses, helps you see how, um, help you see those pathways to feeling better, help you see those pathways to getting the help that you need, the support that you need, and alleviating whatever the challenge that you may feel in the moment. So it's a very, very different um, phenomena than toxic positivity.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a positive slippery slope in the sense that, well, maybe you start like a lot of folks, they start with like, well, it's like, health or this or that. Like a lot of
Yeah,
people, they kind of like, I don't know what else to say. And one
yeah,
of the things that we do is we love to give ideas. Like, is it a
yeah,
pen that you're holding? Is it like the tea that you get to drink? Because
yeah.
all of that really is. And you know what's so wonderful is I feel that, enlightenment is not, we like to think in culture generally, because of
Right.
how we write our stories and movies and etc., um, is that it's a one moment thing,
Yeah.
enlightenment. Something happens, you're enlightened, bang, and your life changes. And that does happen. There's moments that do happen. Having said that, there's also moments where enlightenment is the ever expanding consciousness of mercy.
Mm,
And gratitude is a part of that, of expanding our consciousness of mercy. And you
mm-hmm,
think of that, well, what does that mean, Sohail? That's kind of, deep. Well, if we talked earlier about lovers and being seen. Well, let's say you took, how if someone's in love with someone else or two lovers, they're being thoughtful to one another. Oh, maybe even how they hold each other's hand with a certain level of pressure or something like that. That level of thoughtfulness. Well, then what is the divine doing? Oh, I gave you breath so you can speak. Oh, like whatever, I gave you legs to be able to walk because I want you to walk somewhere. I want you to say something.
mm-hmm,
That is, when you're talking about wanting to experience that for yourself, I feel like
mm-hmm,
that's the context, if I may say, be so bold to say that that's the context of that relationship.
mm-hmm,
And there's a beautiful story, sad but beautiful, given that we're in Ramadan, I'll share this, which is that the Prophet of Islam, peace be upon him, he loved his wife Khadija, peace be
mm-hmm,
upon her, very much, right? And so in one year, they called it the Year of Grief, Abu Talib, which was his uncle, who was a big protector, he passes away, and his beloved wife passes away. And so he goes to a city called Taif.
mm-hmm,
And he goes there to preach because he's like, maybe I can convince people in this message. And so he goes there, and the elders, in fact, they go and tell the slaves and the children to go and stone him as he walks through the street. So he's bloodied and he's beaten by the stones. And from there he goes and seeks refuge in some orchard nearby. He just goes there and sits there. And he comes up with this beautiful prayer. And it's so interesting. You think about it. In that moment of prayer, could someone say grateful, have gratitude? Like, who's going to say You just went through, grief, this incredible grief of people who loved you and supported you in so many ways in your loneliness in life. And now you just went and you gave this message and but kids were stoning you. You're physically harmed. And the prayer is a little bit long, but not a little bit long, but it's a little bit of a paragraph. But in essence, he says something that's really wonderful, which is like, as long as you're pleased with me, I care not.
talking about God,
Yeah, he's saying
meaning
to
as
God,
long
he's saying,
as God is pleased with
yeah, he's like,
yes.
you're the
Mm,
Lord of the weak, and
mm,
you're the Lord of me too. And you know, and as long as you're pleased with me, yeah, I'm content.
Yeah.
That's all and because the light of your face, I seek refuge in the light of your face
Mm,
from this world and the next. And, not everyone's spiritual. I understand. Like, I think gratitude needs to be there to improve the one's mind and body. But for those who are closer to who would like to be closer to their spirits or that this speaks to them, it's important to say that what is it ultimately that we should be grateful for?
mm,
How do we actually contextualize gratitude? And this prayer does a beautiful job of showing that, which is ultimately what really matters.
yeah. Yeah. Mm. Yeah, I mean, as a Muslim, what I've been realizing more and more is that, um, for sure, Islam teaches us the gratitude is the way. It's like if you're feeling down, the very first thing, the moment that you realize, oh, I I actually want to feel better, and I want to do something about it. You start with gratitude, because sometimes you're just so down, you don't want to hear like gratitude. Even the thought of being grateful is like too much. But the moment you want to be able to start feeling better, to do something to help you feel better, you have to basically start with gratitude. And like as a Muslim, one of the ways that we are taught to do that is by uh, saying Alhamdulillah, which is all praise and thanks be to Allah. And a lot of times, you're like, well, what does that do? Well, it's like a trigger for
Yeah.
your mind, like if you're thanking God, there must be something to thank God for. So what is that? And so it just, it's that trigger,
Yeah. Yeah.
that reminder that there's always something to be thankful for. So what is that for you right now? And like for me as a Muslim, one thing that I always have to be thankful for is the presence of God in my life. And actually, when you really begin to sink yourself into that realization, you're like, just like how you shared in this prayer from the Prophet Muhammad, like, do you really need anything else? If you can really realize that God is with you, then what else do we really need?
Yeah.
Because God is the source of everything
Yeah.
that we need. And so the moment we connect with that consciousness of, oh, God is seeing me, and hopefully I'm able to see God's presence in my life more clearly too. But at the very least, I know, so we go back to the idea of feeling seen, feeling loved. If I can remember that God is there, here, right now, seeing me, and not just seeing me like a disinterested
Yeah.
entity, but as a being that loves me, that cares for me, that sustains me, that protects me. So then, it's absolutely, I mean, like you can't have that realization and still feel so down in the dumps.
Yeah. For sure. That's beautifully said. And one of the things you mentioned there too, I think that's applicable to anyone with any background, religious
Mhm.
background or non-religious background, is the psychological anchor,
Mm,
right? Basically, what you said is that there's a psychological anchor that as
yeah.
a reminder. And I think what ends up happening with so many of us, millions of us, in
Mm,
fact, is that we're moving through life. We're just going, you know?
yeah.
day after day. And so the question is then, what is the psychological anchor for you that
Yeah,
can just be that reminder for you? For me, it was scheduled sending an email. And
yeah,
now for hundreds and thousands of people that use Soul, it's getting the text messages. But, maybe that's something else for someone else. Maybe it's a morning routine. Maybe some people do it at
yeah.
night.
Mm-hmm.
So it's
Yeah,
discovering what that is for ourselves and being conscious about what are the anchors in our lives and what narratives in our own beings are they speaking to.
right. Yeah, and don't just depend on one anchor, have lots.
Yeah. I feel like all the anchors are telling a story about who we are
Yeah,
ultimately, right? And
yeah,
that goes then to beliefs,
yeah.
right? Because that story is based upon what we believe to be true about ourselves or
Mm,
believe to be who we are, right? And so we then start saying, okay, well, if I am this, then that, right? If I, for
yeah,
example, care about who I am, then I'm probably going to care about how I dress or how I take care of my body or how, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? It's
yeah,
like that belief then, uh, prospers or blossoms into, into a garden of love, of self-love.
yeah. Aw. Mm. Okay, okay, if you keep bringing up stuff that I want to dig deeper into, and if I ask you another question, I know we're going to go way, 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 way over time. And I know I promised you I'd wrap up within an hour. So I'm going to have to stop myself from asking you any more questions except to ask you if you have any last thoughts that you want to share.
I mean, what I would just say is I'm really grateful for this conversation with you. I thought it was very wonderful and it was very meaningful. And thank you so much for the space to allow me to be here for who you are. And if folks want to try out Soul, they can. It's on, bringsoul.life. You can add the link to the show notes. I'm happy to gift it to folks if they want to use it. But thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to chat with you.
Thank you so much, Sohale. And my last reminder is to our audience, please make sure you check the show notes because yes, I will be dropping Sohale's links in there so you can check out Soul and, just, yeah, get some help and support in terms of building your gratitude habit and so forth. And it's whenever you're ready for it. So please make sure you check the show notes. And until we connect next time, I just wish you lots and lots of peace and joy.